Good afternoon, everyone, and this is a media briefing and update on the restoration efforts following the passage of Hurricane Elsa since last Friday. We are at the Department of Emergency Management in the National Emergency Operations Center, which is still a hive of activity, and therefore you may hear phones ringing and doors closing. The Minister of Home Affairs, Information and Public Affairs, the Honorable Wilfred Abrams, will address us, and some key officials are also on hand to take questions from the media. Minister Abrams?
A packed room. We had a meeting of the NEOC this morning to take reports on all of the key departments, key agencies, key institutions to see exactly where we are in our recovery process following Hurricane Elsa. The Hurricane Elsa itself is a hot topic of contention, and after I do my brief introduction, Mr. Sabu Best will clarify some issues concerning that and the classification. Barbados, we went through a Category 1 hurricane. We were hit by Category 1 hurricane, and we sustained a fair amount of damage to our housing stock in Barbados and to our infrastructure as well. Anyone driving around Barbados over the last couple of days would have seen houses flattened, houses with roofs off, debris all over the place. You would have seen trees down in the road. And I just want to thank all of the critical agencies that went into action immediately after the all-clear was given. In some instances, before the all-clear was given, for example, like NPC, who had to fix some leaks, Light and Power, in some instances, had to do damage assessments. But I want to thank all of those critical agencies who sprung into being immediately after the passage of the storm. The recovery to date has been nothing short of phenomenal. I know people have some issues and some complaints and some concerns about where we are, particularly in respect of electricity, and officials from Light and Power and the technical persons will be here or are here and will be available to answer all questions following their presentation, but they will explain to you exactly where they're at, their policies for the restoration of electricity, and just answer the questions that persons are asking. As I said, I wanted to thank all the critical agencies because for those of us who are still affected by water outages and electricity outages, we may feel that nothing else has happened in Barbados. But the fact that the roads have been cleared as quickly as they have been, the fact that persons have been taken out of collapsed structures and some accommodation found for them already, is a testimony to the hard work of the key agencies who were stood up once the confirmation that the event was going to impact Barbados, and who remain stood up pretty much until we get things under control and are able to stand the emergency center down. I will come back intermittently to flesh out some of the thoughts and flesh out some of the things. We're receiving questions all now, so we will. The structure of this is more to provide information for everybody than for us to be spewing things at you. So I will come back to address some of the questions that are coming in and to give you other key information during this press conference. But right now I wish to turn over to Mr. Sabu Best, who has been the man in the hot seat from the time that the initial warning was given, and a man for whom Barbados is very, very familiar with at this point in time. So Sabu, can you please explain what is going on for us? Let me just pass this down to you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Minister, for the introduction, and good afternoon, Barbados. Before I go into explaining about the passage of Elsa, I just wanted to take just a few seconds to thank my entire staff at the BMS, who throughout the night prior to Elsa's arrival and even during the early morning period was really intense, who stuck in there and showed some acts of bravery, I can tell you. I'm proud of all of them, and sure Barbados is also proud of them. Okay, so, I mean, it's no surprise to anyone that, the winds from Elsa was really devastating, but I'm just going to explain from a meteorological perspective why Elsa was a hurricane. Now, in our region, which is called Region 4, or the Northwestern Hemisphere, once there's maximum sustained winds of 74 miles per hour or greater for 1 minute, average, not gusts, not lulls, the average, for 1 minute, if it is 74 miles per hour or greater, that is hurricane force intensity. Now, looking over the data, we were watching our stations live as everything was unfolding. We started to report tropical storm force winds probably from around 6 o'clock or so at the airport in Charnox in the morning of 2nd of July. And then approximately around 7:20 or so, we started to report hurricane force sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. And that was actually a 2-minute average, not even 1 minute. 1 minute average could have been slightly higher, to be honest. So we actually met the criteria beyond 1 minute sustained average wind speed of 74 miles per hour. It was 2 minutes sustained, 75 miles per hour. We, here in Barbados, we experienced hurricane force winds for about an hour or just under an hour, particularly around the southern half of the island. The maximum wind radii for Elsa in terms of hurricane force winds was very small, only about 33 kilometers. The eye of Elsa passed about roughly 20 miles to the south of Barbados. That's a preliminary track. Obviously, as we go on months and weeks after, there's reassessment and verification of the track forecast and intensity, etc. So this is a live and ongoing study. So having said that, the northern sections of the island might not have felt the 75 miles per hour, but they would have felt very strong storm force winds. And therefore, that's why I believe there have been extensive damage, particularly around the southern half of the island. Christchurch, St. Philip, St. Michael, St. George, etc. After the 9 a.m. or so, the winds start to quickly die off back into tropical storm force winds, and subsequently we start to lift warnings, etc. sometime early in the afternoon. Just to give an idea quickly about the rainfall, there was around 4 to 7 inches of rainfall associated with the passage of the system. It was kind of scattered all over the place in terms of the variations. Some sections, like at the airport or so, in Charnox, we reported around like 5 inches of rain or so. But in higher elevations in the St. Andrew districts, etc., 7 inches of rainfall was actually reported. Luckily, the rainfall rates was not that aggressive, so therefore flash flooding was actually limited at the time, or during the time, sorry. That's basically it from me at this point in time, but let me just repeat. Hurricane Elsa was a Category 1 hurricane with maximum sustained winds of 75 miles per hour, and that was backed up and based on our observations at the Barbados Meteorological Services from our 2-minute average of 75 miles per hour, which is twice the requirement from our region in terms of classification of a system, twice the requirement in terms of the time frame. 1 minute, it only needs to be 74 miles per hour and greater for 1 minute. We had it double that. Thank you, Minister. I'll hand it over to you.
Sorry to have to be doing this and moving this around, but we weren't really set up for a press conference. We were set up for an emergency meeting, but it was necessary based on the questions that we were getting and the queries we were getting that we came to the country. We only wrapped up our meeting or paused the meeting to make this address to Barbados so that you can understand what is actually going on. It is not a difficult, it is not an easy time for people. It is a very, very difficult time for people. Lives have been affected. Luckily, no lives have been lost, but people have lost everything. A man's home is his castle. And most Barbadians, the single greatest investment that they will make in their lives is in the roof over their heads. And for many Barbadians, over 100 families, that roof is gone forever and the structures no longer exist. I want to, before we go any further, assure Barbadians that we as a government are leaving no stone unturned in trying to get you the relief that you need at this point in time. All of the critical agencies are working to try to place persons whose lives were dislocated, try to place persons whose houses or properties were actually lost. We are doing assessments. Now, people have been asking what is the follow-up, what is the actual dollar value of the damage, and something went around. The insurance collective issued a statement today where they had estimated that there was about $5 million in claims or loss in Barbados. I just want to make it very clear because there seemed to have been some misapprehension by the public that this was only $5 million in damage across Barbados. And that was in relation to insured claims. That is their initial assessment. They also said it may go up. But I want to make it very clear to Barbadians, the bulk of the damage and destruction happened to uninsured houses. I urge you, just drive around Barbados and look. And people may not know exactly what $1 million looks like, but you will know that there was a lot of damage and destruction in Barbados, and we've seen a lot of houses flattened on the ground. We don't yet have a dollar figure as to what that value is. The assessment is going on as we speak now. The DM Statistical Services, we're collecting all of the information, and we are collating the information, and we are running the numbers. We're trying to do the assessments and validate the claims. The other thing I want to say is that people have asked about the prioritization of the reconstruction or the assistance with homes. Priority is being and must be given first to those houses that were completely destroyed. And if you think practically, it is very easy to assess a total destruction. If the house is laying on the ground as a pack of cards or is no longer where it was, then that's a total destruction. And we know that those houses then have to be rebuilt. We know that those houses have to be reconstructed in its totality. There's no need to do much further assessment past that. In the cases where houses have been damaged, then you have to get in and see what is actually needed to try to return that house to some level of normalcy. And that is a bit more technical. So the priority at this point in time is validating the claims for total loss of houses. In some instances where the roof has come off, persons may say my roof has been damaged or my roof is off, but when you look at the structure, what the damage sustained to the house in ripping off the roof has actually compromised the entire house, and that needs to be classified as a total rebuild as well. So these are some of the things that we're balancing right now, and the priority right now is to try to get remedial action taken for those who have lost their houses entirely or where the houses are unfit and can't be rehabilitated. That is the focus right now of the Ministry of Housing, RDC, and UDC. So I'm just putting that in some context because that was a question that came up. But I just want to assure Barbadians, you're not walking this alone. If you have lost or you've suffered, you're not walking this alone. If you have insurance, then we're going to lean on the insurances to sort you out. If you are in a position to help yourself, then we're going to ask you to do so. But there are some persons who fall before that line that the government has to take responsibility for. And we have to look out for the most vulnerable. The Prime Minister keeps impressing that we have to look out for the most vulnerable in our communities. We know who they are. When you contact us or when you contact the DM, Kerry is probably going to give you the full information as to what information we need and the contact numbers. But when you contact, full information with a picture and a geotag is useful to us. It helps us to help you. So we need as full information as we can possibly get so that we can expedite the investigation, validate your claim, and start to work on your property as quickly as possible if you're not in a position to do so yourselves. Where it is a case that you have sustained minimal damage but you're still not able to help yourself and you need materials only, then we need to know that so that we can get those materials to you as quickly as possible so you And if you know a carpenter or you have resources to get it put back on, but you just can't get the materials, we can help you with that. As I said, as the questions come in, we'll be a bit more targeted in our responses. But at this point in time, I would like to turn it over to SSA, which is represented by Alf Padmore, Carl Padmore. I don't know how many people actually know you as Carl, but represented by Carl Padmore, because some questions have been coming in relation to the bulk waste collection and who is going to help move trees and move the galvanized, especially with destroyed housing. So just excuse me a second. Is this easy for me to move? I'll sit here.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon. The SSA takes comfort and extends support to all Barbadians, and the psalm that has taken us through all of this is Psalms 46:1. God is our refuge and strength, for very present help in trouble. Psalm for you to keep close to your heart as well. We have, at the SSA, we have family members and staff who have lost homes as well, and from our end, we are very conscious of the devastation caused by the hurricane. But we have resolved as a team to support the initiatives by the government and to be on the front line to get the debris and the bulk waste up. It will not compromise the house-to-house collection. So it will not compromise the municipal remove 5 compactor trucks out to service the entire country of Barbados. That's average. The numbers can go up. What we are working on now, and which we have already, which is already in place, is that we have activated our hotlines 262-5326, 262-5327, and the lines are active. And we want persons, if you see a fallen tree, if you see debris blocking a road, a highway, please call us. It may be blocking the path into your home as well. It may be even blocking the path that would impede the work being done by the utilities companies. We want you to call the hotline so that we can come, remove the debris, remove the bulky waste. So it serves 2 purposes. One, the utility companies can carry out their work, and also, if we get further rain, that the debris would not go into the drains. This project is being supported by the Ministry of Transport, Works and Maintenance and Water Resources, as well as our sister department, that of the National Conservation Committee. So we have trucks that will be deployed throughout Barbados to deal with that specifically, as well as to complement what we have. If you have transport, we urge you to remove, you can help us by removing the bulk waste. Our metal dump at Bagatelle is open from as early as 7 a.m. to around 6 p.m. And you can take the old fridge, the old stove, the metals can go there. The old tree trimmings can go to SBRC, Sustainable Barbados Recycling Center, of course, and it's not going into the landfill because with SBRC, they turn it into mulch. So we're saving the environment. And then the SSA will deal with the other bulk waste that is on the road, as well as the household waste. At this stage, Minister, that's it. The hotlines are up. It's 24 hours as well. 262-5326, 262-5327. Thank you.
Next up, I'm going to ask Mr. Keith Roy Halliday of the Barbados Water Authority to please give his report as to where they are with full restoration.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everyone. For the Barbados Water Authority, we have been making good progress in the sense that most of our stations are online. At the moment, we have 7 facilities only on generator. But our concentration now is on those areas, those remote areas particularly, and those areas in St. Lucie and the Eastern Corridor and the high elevations which traditionally have been, we have usually have challenges with
Keith Roy,
getting water.
if you can just pause a second, please.
Sure. Good afternoon, Minister, colleagues, media, everyone at home and here. For the Barbados Water Authority, the progress has been relatively good in respect of getting our facilities back online on our production capability. At current, we have only 8 facilities now on generator as opposed to being online directly. However, our concern is really about ensuring that the distribution of water at the ends of our distribution systems, and particularly those in the parishes of St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. Joseph, St. John, to some extent St. George and St. Thomas, which have been the traditional areas that have had challenges whenever we have had water problems, those drought-affected areas. Those are the areas now that we're paying particular attention to. Some of the challenges we've had relates to the fact that we have had difficulty with access to some of those remote line stations. We have cleared most of those. We are dealing now with just 1 or 2. For instance, in Whitehill, that is a particular area right now that is blocked by a number, we don't have full access to. We're getting that done and cleared hopefully within the hour. And we should be able to start delivering water to some of those areas, including Whitehill. So our focus right now is basically how can we alleviate the situation for a number of these areas that have not had water in some instances for several days, and making sure that we can bring restitution or resolve the problems for some of these customers. As the days progress, and particularly overnight, we are seeing that the system is becoming that much more replenished, that much more charged, and therefore by evening or tomorrow, we know that we will have less incidents of water outages in some of these areas. I will caution, however, the fact that as the system becomes recharged or replenished again, we are going to discover a number of bursts occurring, which is what has impeded some of the progress that we would have had on some of the fringes, simply because aging infrastructure. And as water surges to the mains again, we typically find ourselves seeing more burst mains. Just a reminder, you can call us at 434-434-4292, 434-4292 to report any incidences or bursts. And you can use our WhatsApp number 836-4655, 836-4683, just to ensure that any messages, texts, or videos that you need to send can reach us for us to address immediately. We want to thank everyone, of course, for the patience. We know, particularly in the first 3 days, it would have been difficult. And now that we're still seeing some pockets or areas where we still have to get water delivered, we know that your patience is being sorely tested. But I want to thank you for understanding where we are at. I want to thank you for working with us. And the final point I will make is really, in terms of our generation capacity or backups, we have found that that has worked well. We've had some negative complaints, that notwithstanding, but appreciate that 2 years ago, we had half of the generation capacity that we have. And certainly going through the year and into the next year, we should resolve the remaining generation backup capacity. But through the assistance of the various ministries we've worked through in government and through the patience of all residents and customers, we were able to make the progress that we made over the last several days. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, Minister. Good afternoon, colleagues. So from Barbados, Leighton Powers, our update as of 12 noon today, So we continue to restore customers following the passage of Hurricane Elsa. And we currently have several crews in the field located across the island. It's pretty much spread out across the island today. And as of 12 noon, customers in Church Village, Moncrief, Foul Bay, Ocean City, parts of Ocean City, Lothers Hill, Country View Estate, St. Philip were either completely or partially restored late yesterday evening. Today we've restored Sheraton Park, Sandy Lane, Barbary Hill, Strathclyde, and in total that represents another 1,368 customers restored today. I know we've been given the percentage restored over the last few days in our releases. We've said we're north of 85%. Some people have been asking in terms of numbers what that actually means. Somewhere in the order of 20,000 customers remain to be restored. Our total customer base is a little north of 130,000 customers. Crews are currently in the areas of Lodge Road, Plum Grove, Sayes Court, Paragon, Lowlands, Market Hill, Lemon Arbor, Salmon, and Rockfield. And then later this afternoon, we'll have crews in Belle Plaine, Coral Ridge. In fact, I think there's some crews in Coral Ridge right now. This thing is very dynamic and changing as we go. Horse Hill, Blackmans, Macaroni Village, and other areas. The teams continue as well. We have other teams in the field doing damage assessments, and that is ongoing. So as we respond to the reports that we get from customers and we go into the field, oftentimes we find maybe additional areas of work that are required. And those, of course, we're reporting back in and updating as the assessments are done. However, we still want to encourage customers to report incidents or issues that they're encountering or seeing using the ECI Restore app that we've launched. You don't have to worry about reporting or multiple reports. We will filter the information in. Is probably better to err on the side of having those reports in. And not worry too much about duplication. We will filter the information and make sure that we have everything and we're preparing our work plans to suit. Safety inspections are taking place at each site where crews are on duty as well, and that's an important point. Actually, on that note, I wanted to highlight a couple safety issues that I wanted to remind the public about. One is that as we energize homes and businesses, there's risk associated with down wires. And that becomes greater as we're going through the energizing the network. So we want to, again, remind folks to avoid power lines, down power lines. Don't assume that they're not live. You should always assume that they're live, and take all of the necessary precautions. And in terms of the crews across the island, want to also encourage the public to be alert and cautious, especially driving, because oftentimes there's some narrow roadways where cars are coming very close to crews. So that's another request to be very slow when driving in the vicinity of crews that are working. In terms of areas that are still out, and that's one item that we've received some, critique on in terms of the notifications and the communications that we've sent out. We'll be doing more of that as comms come out today and later in the week. But just to give an idea, we will likely post, our comms folks will likely post some of these areas that are out so people can see that they aren't forgotten. We certainly aren't forgetting anyone once the reports are in. We log those and we will get to every area. But for example, on the North Point feeder, we have Chance Hall, Pike Corner, Baltic and Mount still to be addressed. I'm not going to call all of these, just give a sample of them. Belle Plaine, there's Portland, Datetree Hill, Cattle Wash, Cleavers Hill, Joes River, Dark Hole, and a few others along that feeder. In Dukes, there's Todd's Corner to Lowers Park, St. Sylvan's Village, Mount Hillaby. Whole Town, we've restored much of Whole Town, both from the Spring Garden direction and then coming down from Highway 2A, like down to Lime Grove and some of those areas adjacent. But there are some sections of Whole Town still that are to be restored. Dukes to Buckley feeder, there's Redland, Macaroni Village, Four Roads, Lemon Arbor, Golden Ridge, Bowenston, Wilson Hill, Coots Pond, and again a few others on that particular feeder that are still to be addressed. Sam Lord's feeder, there's Union and Ruby that we need to get to. On Sunbury, which is again the St. Philip feeder, Padmore Village, Church Village, Moncrief. So these are areas that you'll be seeing over the next couple of days that we'll be featuring on the schedule as we move along the lines of feeders, clear faults along the way until we get to the end of lines. Just a couple others I mentioned: Carrington, Edgecombe, Lower Grace, Hannays, Buckley feeder, the St. Helens Old Post Office, Sixmens, there's Fustic, Whitehall, there's Black Bess, and then on the Providence feeder in the south, there's Atlantic Shores, Ealing Park, Chancery Lane. So those are some examples. That isn't, a fully exhaustive list, but we will be sharing more of those and indicating on each day where we will be and the restoration times, estimated times for recovery or restoration. So I think I'll pause there at this point.
Give me your number.
Good afternoon, Barbados. Good afternoon, everyone. We are here at the National Emergency Operations Center, which was activated on Thursday evening at 10 p.m. There are a wide range of stakeholders at the center here, including public and private sector, as well as a number of volunteers who continue to man the phone lines with respect to taking your various calls and queries. Just to state, the number to report any damages, 438-7575. Just to give you an indication of the reports that we've received thus far, we have in total 2,372 problems reported, of which there are 1,333 reports of roof damage, 326 reports of other house damage. We have, at this point in time, are in the Christchurch area. We have 38 of those. Also, we have a number of them, 25 in the St. Philip area, St. Michael, 20, and the St. John area, we have about 14. In terms of incidents per parish, and this is overall, we have 475 reports, damage reports in the Christchurch area. In St. Michael, 605. In St. George, 269. In St. Philip, 273. In St. Thomas, 127. In St. James, 147. St. John, 119. St. Joseph, 58. St. Lucy, 68. St. Andrew, 105. There are 533 households which have indicated that they needed some type of assistance, in terms of alternate accommodation. And as we continue to take your various reports, we will continue to refine those numbers. As alluded to before, we are currently members of the various damage assessment committees. We are currently in the field doing damage assessment reports and socioeconomic assessments as well. And that this will help us to refine the information that we are receiving here at the National Emergency Operations Center. So just to repeat, the number to report any damage, 438-7575. Thank you.
We're trying to keep this press conference neat because we actually want to get to the section that deals with the questions from the media, who would have been fed questions from the public of Barbados. So we want to give you the answers that you want. One thing that has come through is people have been asking, what are we doing to accommodate persons who have been displaced? The Barbados Hotel and Tourism Authority, along with the Intimate Hotels of Barbados, have provided some room stock of about 108 rooms, and they're trying to add more to that. That's over 10 hotels. We're trying to, as much as possible, make it self-contained unit so persons can cook their own meals and prepare their own foods. We also have had units stood up by the Sons of God Spiritual Baptist Church, 18 units there, and also from the Labour College. The amount of units there, 13 units. So we're trying, and some of these can accommodate multiple persons. The ones at the Spiritual Baptists are 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, so they can accommodate families as well. Right now, the focus of the government is to try to restore some level of normalcy to the lives of the persons who have actually been affected, and to try to get you into some degree of comfort as quickly as we can. This is now about the people of Barbados. We have had disruption, we have had dislocation, we have had damage, and we will get to rebuilding, we will get to restoration. But for now, the critical focus is on the persons, the individuals, the human beings who have been affected. The people have to be our concern, our foremost concern at this point in time. So I'm just putting that out there. That is priority number one for the government of Barbados. At this point in time, I am going to open the floor to questions from the media. And I'm going to ask Lisa. Lisa, if you can manage this from here until that's finished, and I'll do a wrap up. Okay. So the floor is now open to questions from the media.
Members of the media, if you could just come here and pose your questions. Barry, if that's possible. Okay. Barry Allen from the Nation newspaper.
Good afternoon. My first couple questions are for the Managing Director of the Barbados Light and Power Company Limited, Mr. Blackman. Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon. In Barbados today, there's a significant public perception that your company, for use of a better phrase, may have dropped the ball or seemed a bit unprepared for the passing of a Category 1 hurricane. So my question can be broken down into a couple parts. How do you respond to that public perception? And how prepared is your company to deal with a Category 2, 3, or 4 passing of a hurricane? And the third part of the question would be, can you give the public of Barbados an idea as it relates to resources, so they can have an idea of the amount of people you have on the ground? If you have the capacity to bring on more people, should we get a stronger passing of a hurricane? Thank you.
Thanks for those questions. Very, very good questions. I might need you to remind me.
First is your response to the
response.
public perception.
So we are very, very prepared for hurricanes, and we on an annual basis we prepare a hurricane procedures manual. That manual starts to take effect from virtually the beginning of the year prior to the hurricane season starting. It identifies all of the procedures, the checks that we need to make ahead of the start of the hurricane season in June. And then we have preparation meetings where all of the managers, supervisors, persons who have accountability for various areas across the business come together and they report on their various segments. So do we have sufficient spares? Do we have our fuel supplies in hand? And are we prepared to be able to top those up ahead of any warning or watch that is issued? Food supplies, rations for people who have to work in the field. All of those things are accounted for. Then checks of our substations, our equipment, our generating plants, all of our facilities. Those all form part of the checklist. So it's a very comprehensive document. We share it with the DEM and the officials on an annual basis, and it's updated every year and signed off by me as managing director ahead of the start of the year and in preparation for the hurricane season. So that's pretty a standard part of what we do. Also throughout the year and as part of our insurance assessments, we assess the integrity of the assets that we have. So we would do checks, loss assessments, for example, with our insurers to make sure that, and this isn't just for natural hazards, but this is general operations, to ensure that we have things in place to mitigate and manage against potential losses or issues, whether that be fire or other hazards that might exist. So quite an extensive preparation that we have in place, and those checks were all made. All the checks that we needed to check off were checked, and we were very prepared. On this occasion, once the hurricane had passed and we received the all clear, all of those procedures that we have in place took effect, and the crews were out in the field doing the inspections and the repairs that we need to have in place. What was the other?
How prepared do you think you would be for a much stronger system?
So,
2, 3, or 4?
Yeah, I mean, as we have seen over the years, sometimes whether it's category 1, 2, or 3, you need to be prepared even for the tropical storms. Like we would have had Tomas a few years ago, maybe just over a decade ago, that did quite significant disruption or created quite a bit of disruption on the island, despite the fact that it was a tropical storm. And so we take the approach of, whether it's a tropical storm or a hurricane, all of the same procedures take effect and are put in place. Clearly, for higher category hurricanes, the impact will be more severe. So what we saw with this particular event and this hurricane, Elsa, had it been a category 2, 3, 4, or 5, naturally you would expect to have seen greater damage on the network. But again, just same answer I gave for category 1, I would give for the higher levels as well. The difference is that it would be more severe. The amount of work required would be more significant. There's no way we would be, where we are in terms of the restoration had it been a more severe hurricane. And that brings me, I think I remember the other question in relation to resources. So we are part of a group of utilities in the region, an association called CARILEC. And for many years, I'm sure many of you would be aware, you would have seen us in our press releases sending our crews across the Caribbean to our neighbors, brothers and sisters who have been impacted by hurricanes over the years. So that program allows us to call as well on resources to assist us when we are in need. And in fact, as we indicated yesterday, we are bringing in a couple crews from our sister affiliate in Dominica. They were to arrive tomorrow. I think there's a bit of a delay there, so they'll be here at least by Thursday. And those crews with issues, existing crews, their illness, and someone can't come out to work, we'd have those additional resources to supplement what we have, give us greater flexibility as well on the ground to address the issues that we're facing right now. Okay.
While I'm here, I have a question for Mr. Sabu Best, the director, so I can ask that before you leave. Unless he has a question for you. So.
Sure.
Good afternoon, Michael Phillips from the Barbados Advocate. Good afternoon, Mr. Batman.
Good afternoon.
You would have given an extended glossary of some of the areas that you would have been working in, but members of the media have been receiving concerns from members of the public. Some people are seeing lights turning on all around them, but they're in smaller pockets.
Yeah.
So we just want to give the public an idea of how work is prioritized going out from here.
Thanks for that question. We have been getting that as well and trying to address it in the press releases, but maybe not hitting the mark on it. So the prioritizing work, first of all, is we identify critical services like the Defence Force, government agencies, the hospitals, the ports, things like that are top on our priority list to get restored after an event when there's an interruption. And so the feeders, and I've said feeders a few times, maybe people may not know what a feeder is. A feeder is essentially a main artery that we deliver the electricity down, and then you have the feelers coming off of that feeder that feed individual areas, neighborhoods and streets and so on. But the main feeder then that would be associated with those critical, so when we say priority lists, we're talking about, government security services like police, fire service, defense force, water authority is a critical one. So we work closely with Mr. Halliday and his team to ensure that those areas that may not have standby generators, that we get the roads clear along with them and get supply to those so that the water can be restored. And so services like those are the top of the priority list. Then what we have would be, commercial tourism in particular. So we'll be looking to the areas in Whole Town, like yesterday, and for the last few days, would be again high on the list from a business perspective to get things up and running again in the economy. And then after that would be large clusters of customers. Again, you can think of a cluster as a feeder as well. When we get a feeder closed, it means that a large percentage of our customers are not feeder restored. And once we get those feeders all closed, then we start patrolling the lines, starting from the substation, down the artery, and through those feelers. What happens sometimes is when we issue the daily schedule, like yesterday, for example, we would have had in St. Joseph, Blackmans, and Horse Hill. And yesterday we actually didn't get to those as we had planned, because as we went down those arteries and those feeders, there were jobs that took us a little longer than we had anticipated. And so while we do our very best to anticipate and create a schedule and share with the public, we may not always get to it as we had planned in a certain time frame. And so some of those areas that were identified yesterday, those two in particular come to mind because they were on the list yesterday, and they're not on the list today, but we didn't get to them yesterday, and that was an inadvertent miss. Those really are areas that we're going to as well today. So customers, yeah.
Thank you.
Parents realized through a school for black children, no surprise. producing alumni like our own Dr. RPB. So today on this campus we stand to honor this visionary old homeland. By the time this program is done, you would have figured out who is this one. At this time, we will have
Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 to 7. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say, rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing, with prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Here is the end. Read it again. This Bible passage reading is taken from Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 to 7. Rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God,
how do you you went through the list of how you prioritize restorations, but can you drill down a little bit more at the lower end as to how do you prioritize, for example, household or residential restorations, because that has been unclear to some people.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Actually, it was asked earlier, and I think I missed the answer to that one. Before I answer that, though, I just wanted to correct something. I think I mentioned in terms of the design category of hurricane design for most of the designs are category 3 that we have, or buildings and so on are designed for category 3. There may be some plants, I think like the newer solar plant, we would have done some strengthening following the experiences in other islands that bring that closer to category 5. And as I mentioned, there would be studies that we do from time to time on storm surges and so on. In terms of the restoration sequence and priorities, when we restore a feeder or a main artery, what generally happens is you're closing a switch at the substation, which energizes that main artery, as well as the lines coming off of that artery to customers. When you switch that on, anyone who doesn't have a pre-existing fault along that feeder will immediately see their lights back on. But along those feeders, there's additional protective devices, primarily fuses, that will blow if during the event, the hurricane, the storm, branches or some sort of debris came across the line on your street. The fault from compromising the entire network or the rest of the feeder. And so during a storm, what quite often happens is there's debris flying around, hitting lines, and when that happens, fuses blow along the route. And so when we start to restore, we may be very, very far away from the actual village or neighborhood or street when we reclose, and some persons along that route will see power because they didn't have a pre-existing fault, and others may not see it because there's a fuse or a number of fuses that have blown, and the faults may actually still exist on the line. So it's not just a matter of going and immediately reclosing those fuses, because you need to do a full inspection, clear whatever caused the fuse to blow in the first place, make it safe, then do whatever repairs are necessary, and then making it safe to reclose that or reestablish that link. In some instances, the fault itself may have cleared itself, so you may not actually see anything on the line anymore. It may have struck and then blown away, and it's a simple matter of us just closing out the fuse. In other cases, there's work that may need to be done. But in all cases, we need to do a full inspection. So when the restoration is going on, we would do those closing the main feeders. We will what we call inspect the line or run the line to see what we find along the main routes. And we will try to close up along the line in a way that gives us the majority of the customers, that brings the majority of the customers back on. When we do that, as you would see across the island in some areas, there still will be some places or some streets where lights are off because there's a fuse or some other challenge or issue that needs to be resolved. But what we're trying to do in the restoration is we're trying to get as many people as we can back on as quickly as possible with the resources that we have. And so we would do some closing, and then we will dispatch that crew to the next place where you can bring on hundreds rather than maybe dozens of customers for that same resource. So that's why in the first instance you'll see some places where one street is on and the other street is off because there's some fault on that street that needs to be addressed. And the reason why we may not get back there immediately is because we're on another street somewhere or neighborhood where we're restoring hundreds of customers with the same crew. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we wrap up, I just want to thank the Drainage Division in the Ministry of Public Works, and for a particular reason. A lot of people asked how come it was that we didn't see a lot of flooding with the passage of this system. Just prior to the passage of the system, the morning before, we gave the final instructions to the key agencies. Drainage has already been doing a program with retention ponds and detention ponds and channeling the water to where it needs to go, and that was shown at the passage system to have borne fruit, because many areas that we would have expected to have flooded with the amount of rain that we got did not. And in many cases, it was due to the sterling work done by the drainage division and those other people that you saw taken on to do that. So even like the ash workers that were taken off following the volcanic eruption were out in full force, clearing drains, clearing the fronts of wells, clearing waterways. And also, I want to thank Barbadians as well who took this quite seriously. We made an appeal for Bajans to clear up around the houses, and many people, in fact, did do that. We asked people, sanitation went out in full force the day to do a garbage collection for pretty much the entire of Barbados on that one day, and persons did heed the call to take in their garbage. And so a lot of things that would have normally been blowing around or would have been on the streets, Barbadians really did actually heed the call where this one was concerned. I want to as well thank Mr. Bess. Barry asked him some very challenging questions, but I'll say this. We were on the ground. The bulk of the people that you see here from the EOC were here during the storm. And we kept making the point to Barbadians to please monitor the official government channels, monitor our media partners, because things are subject to change at very, very short notice. When the Met Office or when we issue the information, we can only issue the information based on what is in front of us at the time. Many times during the course of the night, the storm threatened to fall apart. When the storm was coming towards Barbados at a number of points, it threatened to separate into two, which would have significantly weakened the storm. But every time that happened, the storm came back together again. So with the best model in the world, it is simply modeling, and nature will do what nature does, which is why it is so important in this time to keep monitoring the official channels and keep up to date. That way you know what is going on. In this particular instance, we hid nothing from anybody. Barbados got its information in real time as things developed on the satellite imagery. Met fed to the EOC, and we fed to Barbados. So everything you got was maybe 2 or 3 minutes after it was that we got it as well. So I want to thank and congratulate Sabu and the hardworking team at the Met Services who went over and above with this. And I'm going to ask you, Sabu, just keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. So having said all of that, I want finally, in my wrap-up, to thank the hard-working team at the NEOC. There's some people who went home, I believe, yesterday afternoon for the first time since this event happened. Everybody's reporting for work. A number of persons in this room have had damage to their own property, and they're still without electricity, in some cases water, but they've reported faithfully here to be able to take the information, to be able to channel the resources, to be able to get assistance to you, the public of Barbados, to be able to help our most vulnerable persons, because this is what it's all about. The storm has passed. The storm has passed. The cleanup is now ongoing. And involved in that cleanup is an assessment of exactly where we are and what resources are needed to try to put Barbados back on some footing. And also critical in that assessment is what are the needs of the persons who were most impacted, and how can we as a government best help you to try to get yourself back on your feet. A roof over your head right now is a critical thing. So all those who are without assistance or still in need of assistance, you know the information to call. Kerry gave it earlier, but we're going to keep pushing it out through social media. Please contact us if you are in need. You do not have to suffer alone. We are walking this journey with you. It is not an easy thing. This has not happened in many years. This level of destruction has not been seen since, I believe, Hurricane Janet, and that was before I was born. So this is a new thing for most Barbadians. We have to be our brother's keeper at this point in time. Reach out a hand and help somebody who is near you. Some of you have neighbors staying with you. Just do your best. It can't be simple. Just do your best and remember that today for me, tomorrow for you. At some point in time, you may need that same neighbor that you're helping now. So We will come back as needs be to give updates, or we will circulate them through press statements if that would be sufficient to disseminate the information. Its feet. An admirable job has been done so far. A lot has been done, but there's still a lot more to be done. And I'm asking Barbadians to be patient. Just be patient and bear with all who are working, trying to assist you. Lieutenant Paul has taken some stick. Mr. Blackman has been here and he has answered all the questions that were posed to him. And I have spoken to the comms persons from Lieutenant Paul and asked them just to please reach out a lot more often so people are aware of what is going on, and they've committed to doing that. So, you know, it is a process. It is a process. But we are on the way and we're trying to get things back to normal as quickly as possible. So, Barbados, if you were affected, we feel you. We feel you. We're trying to do our best for you. For the rest, just bear with us and be safe. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Parents realized through a school for black children, no surprise. Producing alumni like our own Dr. RPB. So today on this campus we stand to honor this visionary, oh how grand. By the time this program is done, you would have figured out who is this one. At this time we will have